Right, so now we're joined by Alice Walt, who is former executive board officer of the 36th District Democrats and former chair of the King County Democrats, here from Fair Election Seattle to talk about voting yes on Proposition 1. So go ahead and take 5 minutes and tell us about Proposition 1.
Thank you. I've sat through many of these kinds of endorsement meetings, so I really appreciate you all for being here tonight, because I know it can get to be quite a drag after a couple of nights, and actually I think we have 3 nights in a row here, so thanks a lot. And as I said, I feel like I'm about halfway there because of the resolution that was passed, I guess, in April. That endorsed the effort to get this on the ballot in the first place. And happy to say that the City Council unanimously approved putting it on the ballot. And I just want to know if there's anybody here that doesn't think there's enough money going into campaigns yet. This is an effort to actually make elected officials more accountable to the voters, to us, the people, to we, the people, and a way to make sure that elections are clean and fair and open up the effort, the elections, so that more people are involved, not just as candidates, but as supporters of elections. And as a matter of fact, I have some envelopes right here, and if you haven't given your $10 yet, please do so. If you've already given your $10, please give the envelope to somebody else. One of the things in this campaign is that candidates who can get public financing need to raise small donations from 600 individuals before they can, 600 residents before they can be eligible for public financing. So this makes everybody that donates anything to a campaign much more important than the people who can give the big bucks. And the Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission actually did a study about how few people were now supporting city council candidates. And you probably know that I am the executive director of Washington Public Campaigns. It's an organization, a statewide organization that has been working on public financing for a number of years, since about 2002. And at one point, we really were optimistic about getting public financing passed in the state. That took a turn for the worse when we had Linda Smith, who was a very conservative member of the legislature, stick in an initiative that she was supporting that got passed, which was one of the first, limit taxes in the state, that said no jurisdiction in the state could pass any kind of public financing for elections. We finally got that overturned in 2008, and we are now very hopeful that Seattle will be the first place in the state that will actually support and put public financing into effect. It is a tremendous benefit for not just the voters, but also for elected officials. For the voters, it means that getting them big money out of campaigns is a way to level the playing field and to make candidates more responsible to the voters. For the voters, it means that you have more access. If you ask Joseph Pia, who is on the steering committee along with Jeff and me, whether or not people who give more money have more access to elected officials, just ask him. He was in Olympia for about a week and figured it all out. So I just want to say that I would really appreciate, we would appreciate, the steering committee would appreciate the 36th district wholehearted support for this effort.
Great, thank you. Right on time. So now we'll open up to follow-up questions, up to 2-minute responses to each of them. So any questions for Alice about public financing campaigns? Well, I have one. Or actually, David and John, yeah.
Well, Alice, has there ever been a proposition that was as much of a no-brainer as this one?
I thought you were going to do a softball, David.
Well, I mean, you've been active for a lot of years. I've been active for a lot of years. Last time I think I had one that was this easy was Hands Off Washington,
Yeah,
right? You know.
right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Can you think of one?
I can't think of one, and I can't think of one, a tax that is less than this one either. I mean, this is 50 cents a month. I paid $5. That was, I thought that was kind of expensive for a latte this morning. But up in Sip and Ship, that's what it costs. So, so it's like, you know, this is really, yeah, it is a no-brainer. And it's something that the city of Seattle had before. And it was when the ban came out in this initiative, it, you know, the public financing of city elections disappeared.
We elected Norm Rice in
Yep.
1989 under these same rules.
Yep. He elected Nick Licata. He elected Jim Street, Dolores Sabanda, a lot of good candidates.
John?
It may not be fair to ask you this, but what possibly could the no on Prop 1 campaign say?
Well, they will say that this is just a boondoggle for the voters of Seattle, that we have higher priorities for tax money, and that why should we be paying for somebody to run for public office? And I think that's pretty, I mean, for everybody around this table, that's pretty easy for you to figure out. Why we should pay for them to run for office instead of them going out and getting the highest bidder.
There's no obligations, I'm sure, though.
Evan?
So, sorry, I took a sip of my own nose. My question is, I guess, sort of an example question in terms of numbers. What do you expect the amount of money a candidate is going to have to raise to realistically go down to? So say, compared to what a city, let's say city council as opposed to mayor, a city council candidate is going to have to raise and spend right now on average to win, versus what you'd expect them to have to raise on their own in addition to public financing. And sort of as a tie-in, and talk about sort of what happens, what happens at least in the presidential races, where you have public financing, but if your opponent gives it up in order to just raise as much as they want to raise, does it become a moot point? I mean, is the city spending a lot of money on candidates that are still competing with someone else who's outspending them 4, 5, 6 to 1?
Well, the initiative has pegged the financing to the 2011 election for city council, where the average was about $210,000. So if you're running citywide, you need that kind of money to run. And so because it's a 6-to-1 match, the candidate only has to raise about $35,000 to get the match. And so it's really a win-win situation, both for the contributors and for the candidate. I think that, you know, having raised money for a campaign myself, that it is, you know, spending every day, hours of the day, calling for money instead of going out there and meeting the voters and figuring out what they would like to have you do once you're elected is a huge, huge advantage of public financing. And so I think the way this has been set up, it's a generous match, and it's generous, but the 600 contributors makes it a challenge enough that that flaky candidates probably are not going to be able to get enough to run.
Guys, follow up.
Because they have to get the 600 individual contributions?
600 individual contributions of $10 or more.
Go ahead.
So, to follow up, what are the limitations that are placed on a candidate that might induce a candidate that has no problem raising money to not take the public financing and just continue raising the same amount of money?
Well, if they are, first off, you have to have an opponent. You can't just get public money without having an opponent. And so if the person that you're running against is outraising you, you can request the SEC to relieve you from the public financing and the limits on the public financing, which is $240,000 for the campaign. And go ahead and raise the additional money if you think you can. I mean, I think, you know, a citywide race, and there are not very many people that have the deep pockets themselves, or know people with deep pockets that can provide that kind of money. And it's one of the reasons why there aren't very many challengers to incumbents.
So I have a question. Can you speak about maybe other jurisdictions around the country who've done public financing, and what have their experiences been with, and what have the results been by having public financing in place?
Well, some of the cities that have public financing are Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City. There have been studies done in those jurisdictions, those cities, especially New York, where it is shown that it has created diversity in the opponents, that it does make the candidates more responsible and more accountable to the voters. And so, you know, there's been some comparison to like Maine and Arizona, where they have state public financing, which would show that, well, incumbents usually win anyway. However, those states are statewide election, not statewide, but legislative elections, where the legislative districts are pretty set up so that they're either Democrat or Republican. And so there isn't a lot of opposition. And so the incumbent sometimes is not challenged, but at least in the cities where there is a diverse population, that it has created more diverse campaigns.
Mary?
What about if the districts thing passes and would you still be asking for the same number of contributors but from a smaller area, or would that be adjusted?
It would be adjusted, and we had hoped that they would put the kind of adjustment into the amendment, the referendum, which the city council chose not to. But those of us who are supporting it do not see any conflict with the district proposal. And frankly, personally, I think that both of them are parallel, working towards the same goal,
Yeah.
and would reduce the cost of.
So you'd have
office.
80-some required contributions rather in those districts, 7 districts.
Right, the two at large would probably continue as a 600 requirement, but by district it would be, I'm sure that the city council would
Probably
probably.
85, 86.
Yeah, well,
So, I remember I brought this up to a city council member that I was talking to, and he said that this would only cover if the district's passed, it would only cover the 2
At large.
at large. And that would
The
have
way-
to amend it down the road.
Yeah, yeah. We would have 2 years to make changes. So I think the city council would probably, I think the city council would be open to it. If districts passed, they'd get the message, right?
great. Any additional questions? Yeah, Mary?
Is there 7, do we have only 7 city council? Not 9?
We have 9.
Who are the 2 that didn't endorse it?
Well, I think there's only one that didn't endorse it, and I was gonna ask you.
Oh, I'm sorry,
if
city
you-
council president.
If you interviewed her, but she probably, you probably didn't need to interview her
Not
because
this
she's
year.
probably endorsed in the primary.
Uh,
Sally Bagshaw.
We interviewed her back in early May, yeah.
Yeah, she voted for it in the council, but she has not endorsed it yet.
Okay.
And there are some of us who have messages into her to ask her why, which she has chosen not to respond to.
Interesting.
And I have yard signs for her that I have not put up.
Yes.
Coincidentally.
Go ahead for another one.
And then unrelated.
So, we have time for maybe one more question. Any questions for Alice? Alice, you already passed out remit envelopes. What else can we do to help?
Well,
Assuming we
you
endorse.
know, one of the problems is that campaigns for good government issues and reform issues often do not raise a lot of money. And so what you could do is hold a house party. You could, please do doorbell your neighbors and help us get the word out. Our biggest problem is that people who don't know about public financing and don't have a clue about what it's about and the advantages of it, tend right off to want to maintain the status quo and not support it. If they know about it, they tend to support it. This was borne out by the polling that we did very early on, and so we really hope that you will help us get the word out. If you belong to an organization that does anything having to do with elections, ballot issues, or whatever, invite us to come and speak. We have a number of people who are willing to come and speak to anybody and everybody. This is really a nonpartisan issue. And so if you belong to a mixed group, we're happy to come and talk to whoever. So that's some of the things you can do. We're really trying to raise the 600 individual donors by the election to show how easy it is, right? So please, and if you've donated, pass the envelope on to somebody that hasn't. Thanks.
Great. We actually have time. That's how I'm going to close it. Thank you very much.